Welcome back, everyone, to this explainer on BDM-2195-CH08 overview. I am absolutely thrilled to dive into this with you today because we're focusing on the incredible world of entrepreneurial finance. You can think of a brilliant business idea kind of like a high-performance sports car, right? It might have the absolute best design, the most aerodynamic curves, and the potential to just shatter records. But if you don't have any fuel, it's literally just going to sit there in the driveway. So today, we're talking about that fuel, capital. We are going to explore exactly where entrepreneurs find the resources they need to take their vision from a messy sketch on a napkin to a fully functioning, thriving enterprise. So let's kick things off with a question that seems pretty simple on the surface, but is actually the single biggest hurdle for any new founder. Where do companies actually get their money? It's really easy to look at massive tech giants today and just assume they magically appeared with millions of dollars in the bank. But let's be real, that is rarely how it happens. Challenging our preconceived notions about startup funding is step one to truly understanding how this whole entrepreneurial journey works. Here's how we're going to break down that journey today. First, the spark of bootstrapping. Second, debt versus equity financing. Third, the power of crowdfunding. Fourth, demystifying venture capital. And finally, enter the angel investors. Let's get into it. Now, this journey we're talking about is what we call the financing continuum. It's not just a random list of options. It's a literal ladder of growth. At the very bottom left, you have the foundation, which is the owner's own money. We're talking starting with maybe as little as $10. As the business grows and, needs more of that fuel, the sources have to scale up. So you move through family and friends, up to angels and seed capital, through commercial banks and venture capital, all the way up to the top right, an initial public offering, or IPO, raising $5 million and way beyond. Every single founder has to navigate this exact staircase. All right, step one, the spark of bootstrapping, starting with what you have. So the most crucial starting point to understand is bootstrapping. It literally means pulling yourself up by your own bootstraps. You're using your personal savings, maxing out your own credit cards, or taking the actual cash your early sales are generating to fund the company's growth. It's like taking the cash from selling your first 10 units just so you can build the next 50. The beauty of this, it is incredibly empowering. It's cheap. And because there are zero external investors involved, you maintain total, absolute control. You get to focus purely on the business. But it's definitely not without its dark side. The risk rests entirely on your shoulders. Cash can dry up super quickly, and the stress, especially if you've tapped into money from your friends and family, can be absolutely enormous. Moving on to step two, debt versus equity financing, the great divide. Eventually, the bootstrap money runs out. And when you hit this crossroads, I want you to think of your choices as a classic rent versus own dilemma. Debt financing is essentially renting your fuel. You borrow money from a commercial bank and you pay a fee, interest, to use it. The big win here, you don't lose any ownership of your company. It is 100% yours. But the downside, those regular, unforgiving monthly interest payments that can absolutely choke a startup's fragile cash flow. Equity financing, on the flip side, is basically inviting someone to co-own the car with you. You sell a share of your ownership in return for funding. Believe it or not, this is actually a much safer option for a brand new venture. Why? Because there are no monthly interest payments bleeding your bank account dry, and investors aren't legally guaranteed to get their money back if the business goes under. The catch, of course, is that you have to be willing to share the profits and share control of your dream. That brings us to step three, the power of crowdfunding, funding from the crowd. Now, the internet has completely rewritten the rule book here with crowdfunding. It allows founders to just bypass the banks and pitch directly to the public. But you've got to know there are two very distinct flavors here. First up, rewards crowdfunding. This is your classic Kickstarter campaign. People give you money, and in return, you send them a cool t-shirt, early access to your product, or maybe just a heartfelt thank you. The best part? You incur zero debt and you sacrifice absolutely no equity. Then there is equity crowdfunding. This is a massive game changer where you actually give the crowd shares of your venture in exchange for their money. It is a fantastic way to secure funding, build a public profile, and get immediate market feedback all at once. Plus, new legislation actually allows companies to raise up to $50 million this way. Step 4. Demystifying venture capital. Fact versus fiction. Pop culture loves to paint venture capitalists, or VCs, as these predatory sharks just waiting in the water to steal your company and boss you around. Well, let's bust that myth right now. While they are incredibly powerful sources of equity funding, VCs are actually hyper-focused on one thing: return on investment and evaluating risk. Generally speaking, they don't want to run your business for you. They want you to succeed. In fact, they bring massive value way beyond just writing a check. They provide brilliant market strategy. They help recruit top-tier employees. They establish accounting controls. And they open up an incredible network of industry contacts. The thing is, VCs evaluate a new venture clinically. They look at it on two main axes: the status of the product and the status of the management team. So if you're at level 1 for both, meaning you basically just have a cool idea that isn't operable yet and you're a solo founder working out of your garage, that is the absolute riskiest bet for them. But if you move up that matrix to level 4, where you have a fully developed product with real satisfied users and a fully staffed experienced management team, the risk drops significantly. VCs literally use this grid to mathematically weigh their risk against the potential return. And because VCs are taking on such massive risk, knowing full well that a lot of startups are going to fail entirely, they require staggering returns from the winners to justify it and pay for all the losers. To put that into perspective, if you approach a VC at the startup or idea stage, they are looking for an expected annual return on investment of 60% or more. They want to see a clear path where their initial investment multiplies by 10 to 15 times. Obviously, as your business matures to first stage or expansion financing, the risk goes down, and so do their crazy return expectations. Finally, step 5. Enter the angel investors, the informal risk capital. Now we enter the world of business angels, sometimes called informal risk capitalists. These are typically wealthy individuals looking to invest their own personal money into startups. Their typical deal size usually ranges right in that sweet spot of $250,000 to $600,000. This is a very different but highly impactful scale for early-stage ventures, and it perfectly fills that massive gap in the financing continuum we talked about earlier. So you really need to understand the trade-offs when working with Angel. On the plus side, angels are perfectly willing to engage in these smaller financial deals that big VC firms will just ignore. They love the seed and startup stages. They are often highly localized, and they usually possess a genuine personal interest in the entrepreneur. Think of like a successful local doctor or a retired corporate exec who wants to help build their community, rather than some faceless Wall Street institution. But you have to weigh those pros against the cons. An angel investor typically cannot offer the national image or the elite future contacts that a massive VC firm brings to the table. Also, they usually only have deep enough pockets for one round of funding. They are not going to have an extra $10 million lying around when you need to expand again in 2 years. And because it is their own personal cash on the line, they might want to be a bit of a backseat driver in day-to-day decision-making. Well, that brings us full circle on our journey through Chapter 8. From the stressful, gritty independence of bootstrapping to the strategic calculations of venture capitalists, all the way to the localized support of business angels. Every single source of capital we've covered carries its own unique weight and expectation. So I want to leave you with a thought-provoking question to ponder as you envision your own hypothetical startup. When the time comes to fuel up your high-performance business machine, would you rather borrow the money, keep the burden, and hold on to total control? Or would you rather share the dream, give up a piece of the pie, and invite investors along for the ride? Think carefully about it, because the capital you choose will ultimately shape the very company you build.